I know you mentioned earlier you guys were talking about adding stuff in the future, but is there anything that you want to add to this Cryptid Con for your? I mean, for you personally, that you want to add that would bring something bigger to the table, possibly.
Yeah, there's going to be. Here's the thing with Cryptid Con, we're leaving room to expand, and we feel that we need to probably, if we're going to expand anywhere, of course, the first thing that we're going to expand to will be paranormal. And we may involve a few more speakers on different things. But with the whole Bigfoot monsters and legends thing, you could go anywhere with that. You might have movie monsters. You might want to bring in somebody that played Godzilla or something like that because you're going to hit that fan base. So really, the possibilities are endless. And that's what I love about creating these new genres or subgenres of conventions. There's no rules. We can do anything. Where, when we did the paranormal horror thing, nobody had ever done that before. They told me that I was nuts for even thinking about it. Told us we were nuts for even coming up with something like that. It worked. And so there's really no rules, and that's what I love about it. You can go anywhere with it. And for me personally, I love bringing in some of these researchers that I've read their books for years and getting to sit down and trade ideas with them. Because for me, I'm still a researcher. Lee and Jennifer, they still research things. But for me, I've been a cryptid fan for as long as I could read. So it's thrilling for me to sit down and say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? The first time I met Bobo was on the Queen Mary out in Long Beach. We brought him out to one of the Nick Groff Tour events, and me and him just stood there and talked about Bigfoot for forever. And I felt like it was somebody that understood what I was talking about because we were talking about pieces of footage that other people may not have seen.
Right.
And it was fun just to trade these different theories and to hear his thoughts and to hear his experiences that he had out in the field. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. It's so fun to learn and to talk with these people.
I mean, you got me sitting here watching Monsters and Mysteries right now on Destination America.
Well, you probably see me on there. I'm on, let me think.
You're on
four segments of that. I'm on 4 different segments for that. So
really on Monsters and Mysteries? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm on I was on the John Keel special, which was kind of the Mothman thing, and then I was on the little area when they were talking about the Kelly Little Green Men. Geraldine's on there, and then I was on there for just a little bit, and then I was on the Louisville UFO chase that happened in Louisville, Kentucky, and then they put me into the Sheep Squatch episode. So yeah, they asked me about Sheep Squatch, and I was like, listen, I ain't even never heard of that. That just sounds unreal to me, but who's to say what's unreal and what ain't?
Right.
They still put me in on there, and it's funny because people come up and say, well, what about Sheep Squatch? I'm like, I don't know nothing about Sheep Squatch. That's all the power of editing, folks, when they put me in on that. All I was doing was talking about creatures in the woods and stuff.
Here's my question for you, because I saw you on Paranormal Lockdown. How much activity are you still having in that building that I guess you own or have rights to?
Well, no, I was kind of being the caretaker at the time. I've stopped working with it now.
Oh, okay.
And, I'll tell you honestly, is it active? Yes. It's an active location. To me, I don't work with it anymore. The owners kind of went a different direction with it, and I stopped doing research in there. But to me, my research, it kind of plateaued. Because when you've researched a location 300 hours, I mean, there's really not a whole lot more you can get out of it.
Right.
Because you've kind of hit what you need to with there. But I learned a lot from that location. Is it active? Of course it is. But it's no more active than anything else. I mean, people always ask, what's the scariest place you've been? Well, for me, it's not like that. And these places don't scare me. So to me, it's more like, what kind of breaking into different categories. Where did I get the most physical evidence? Where did I get the most personal experience? There's several places I've been that just normal people wouldn't even ever think of going to. There's buildings here in town that sit right across the street from the Anderson Hotel that are 10 times more active. And it's just because they don't have that colorful story, they're not going to be on television.
Right.
So, you know how it is.
Sure. Right.
TV likes to tell that good story, and Nick and them do an awesome job with that show. And Paranormal Lockdown to me it kind of gets back to the roots of things.
Yeah.
And, Nick does awesome with producing that show and putting it out there to people. And I
like
really
it.
think he hit his goal, because when he was coming up with it and he was starting to film it, he was talking to us about it when we were doing the tour, and he said, this is kind of what I want to do, and he hit it. I mean, when it came out, I said, you got it. You nailed it. You nailed every bit of it, from the opening theme song to everything. It's all him. There is no outside influence. It's all him.
And that's
good.
What
I love about it. You get to see his creativeness.
Right. And that's good. I mean, I thought that in a way he should have broke away a long time ago. But, I like Paranormal Lockdown. People can say what they want to say about it. But, folks, it's TV. Things are going to be blown out of the water, and that's fine. But the bottom of the line is, like you said, they're going back to the old roots of doing paranormal investigating. You don't have, adding stuff in and things like that. What I'm trying to get is you don't see.
Here's the big thing with that, and what he shot for. He didn't want a camera crew, so he didn't want there to be people that were there that may be knocking around and making noises. What he wanted was raw and as real as it can get. So basically, what he and Katrina does. Now I know this for a fact because I've seen it myself. And I know because I talk to them both all the time. They live there. When they come to these places for 3 days, they are on that property. Now, on some locations, they may not be able to sleep in there because of certain, environmental factors. So they may just have an RV outside, but they are in that building. I know when they filmed the Paranormal Lockdown episode, they had an RV for toilet use. But that's it. They were inside of there. I had to go in there every single morning and make sure they were okay. And I did that to make sure they didn't need anything, because you got to realize with a building like that, there's no air or heat up there.
Right, yeah.
So for me, whenever, I just wanted to make sure they were alive.
Well, sure.
Basically is what it come down to. So, I would go out there and meet with the producers and stuff on scene every morning and say, okay, you need anything? Is everything okay? And then, I got to talk to Nick and them when they were done. And, during the filming, they may ask my opinion on, look at this, here's what happened to us. What do you think? So when they're in there, you don't get to see the real experience on television. You just get to see a cut-down version. But when they're in these environments, they are constantly going back and forth with the people that have researched there, saying, listen, here's what we got. What you think? Or where you think we need to go next? Or what should we try? So, I mean, they're really trying to dig into these locations, and they're getting some amazing things out of it.
Here's my next question to you, my brother, because I love talking paranormal stuff with you.
Yeah.
Because you're more educated. I know I've done it for 6 years, but you have more years on me and things like that, and you researched a hell of a lot more. But
yeah.
What about Perryville? Do you cover Perryville? Do you do the ghost walks for Perryville or no?
Well, here's the thing about Perryville. They've switched directors.
Okay.
The director retired, so the state has decided to stop doing paranormal things there.
Okay.
Which, that happens sometimes. And, me and Lee and Jennifer both have worked on Perryville for years. And that was honestly, I was the first investigator to ever officially be allowed to investigate Perryville. I wrote a letter to the state park, and I set up a meeting, and they allowed me in. So I was the very first one to officially be able to do it. Now, other people trespassed and were out there thrill-seeking, but I was it. And then whenever I got kind of wrapped up with the ghost walk here in Lawrenceburg, I handed it over to Lee and Jennifer because I trusted them, and I knew that they would pay the proper respects and they wouldn't do anything silly to the place. And they took care of it after that, and I would just kind of hop in from time to time. But Perryville, for me, is where I got to cut my teeth as an investigator. I could go out there anytime. I could make a phone call to the director, and I could say, I want to go out, and I'm going to be out there for a little while this night or that night. And I could just go out there and hang out and sit. And I've done that many times. And I've had so many experiences at Perryville. And it is such an active place, but you got to also realize when you come in and you're investigating a battlefield like that, you also got to treat it like it is. It is a graveyard. There's mass graves all over that place, and some of them are not marked, and they're still working on that stuff. But, men died there, so you got to really go in there with the respect of there was men that lost their lives, and they are, war veterans. That's what they are. I mean, they are people that, whether they were Confederate or Union soldiers, they've made all of those guys now. They are all war veterans, so they are all paid the same respect as anybody else, and they paid their lives, and they lost their lives on that battlefield fighting for what eventually became a little bit of understanding of America, because it was kind of turmoil there for a while.
Yeah.
But it really, Perryville was the battle that decided what side Kentucky was going to go on. Now, there were other battles that took place, but it was a major turning point in the Civil War for Kentucky. It was crazy. I mean, but I've had some of the craziest experiences there, and Lee and Jennifer were there for a lot of them. And I'm telling you, man, it's spooky. One of the craziest ones we had was me and Lee and Jennifer were out there with a friend of mine one night. We were investigating. We heard a horse running full gallop toward us on dry land, and it was muddy and soupy outside. And, I mean, it was running full gallop toward us. It stopped about 4 foot from us and just went away. Just stopped. And we thought we was going to be ran over by a horse. But the crazy part about it, it was running on dry ground, and it was very muddy that night. So it was nuts to hear some of that stuff. We've heard full conversations carried on by men in some of those valleys. When we were over there, Jennifer and Donnie were on another hill, and me and another guy were on this hill, and we heard people talking. Well, I called Jennifer, and I was like, hey, are y'all down there? And they were like, no, we're hearing it too. There was nobody else on the entire park, and we heard that with our ears. I mean, it was nuts to hear some of that stuff. You'd hear cannons all the time. You would hear stray cannon fire, and people would be like, oh, did you hear that? And it got to be so regular for us, we didn't even react to it anymore.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was awesome to see some of that stuff.
That's crazy. I know we got a battlefield here in Floyd County, Middle Creek, but, it's just that it's a small skirmish, so who even knows if anybody died on it?
Right.
But you got thrill seekers.
And I would say you probably do have some residual that you could probably experience there.
And we have.
The coolest thing about Perryville, and I don't even know if you call it cool, but for war historians, they may, it was one of the more brutal battles of the Civil War, and they say that some of the historians do because of how fast it happened and the amount of lives that were lost so quickly. So that's why they call it one of the most brutal battles, because of that quick loss of life. Because a lot of those soldiers that came into there had never experienced battle before, and some of them were going up against other regiments that had been very experienced with battle. So some of them, there's one area out there called the Slaughter Pen, and that's where just men were just picked off. I mean, it was just bloody warfare took place there, and that was one area that they called it. And then the cornfield that's one of the areas where, there was a cornfield there for the farmer, Mr. Bottom's land, and they actually had hand-to-hand combat inside of that corn. So, I mean, some very brutal stuff took place there.
Does Kentucky actually have any true evidence of Bigfoot or UFOs or any cryptozoology, cryptid stuff like that, possibly? I mean, do we have any actual evidence of any of this, possibly, over the years?
Here's the thing. Here's what gets kind of weird for me, and here's what gets it bothers me a little bit, is you've got some people out there that only count physical things as being evidence, which to me, an eyewitness account, and I mean a good eyewitness account where it's not somebody out of their mind or whatever. If you can go out there, you got to realize that eyewitness could have gathered really good physical evidence if they would have kept their bearing. But you got to realize you're looking at an 8 to 10 foot high creature covered in hair that you don't know if it's going to eat you or not. Well, of course you're going to be scared to death.
Well, sure.
But I think if somebody could witness Bigfoot, you see this creature, and then you kind of let things chill out. You get out of their area for a minute because, there are accounts where they sound like they are kind of territorial. I don't want to have my arms ripped off by one of these creatures. But let them go away, and they're going to leave some type of evidence. But some people don't keep their bearing long enough to gather this stuff. And I think that's sometimes what you run into. But Kentucky has had There have been some videos, some pictures that were captured, but they're controversial, and they're going to, because in today's era, you can fake anything. Even video you can fake. The biggest thing about the Patterson-Gimlin footage and why it is considered one of the most credible is because of that era. It was almost just unbelievable for somebody to fake that. They didn't have the resources, the money to do that. Now, could you have built a monkey suit that looked real like that does? Yes, but there's been research done to say there was only a handful of people that could have done that. And so the resources were just not there for that back in that era. But what you got today, it's easier for people to fake things. And you see it all the time. You can see a video or a picture on Facebook, and you don't know if it's real or not.
True.
And Photoshop these days, you can make anything happen. So I think that today it's not a difference in, are there good pieces of evidence? You got to have the whole picture. You got to have a good eyewitness account. You got to have physical evidence. Maybe you got a picture and a footprint. So, you got to kind of have the whole picture, and I think that'll help. But there's some really awesome sightings in Kentucky. And I'll tell you the God's honest truth, I'd love to sit down with some of these game wardens, and talk to some of these guys. Because, officially they couldn't go on the record and talk about that stuff. But that if they're out there in these woods, especially in eastern Kentucky and some of these hot spots, they've had accounts. They've had people call them. They've seen things, because that's their job, is to be out in the wilderness with wild game. So I would love to sit down with some of them off the record. So, hey, game wardens, if you're listening to this, get in contact with me. I won't tell anything. I just want your story. But you know it's out there. You know that it is. I'll tell you something else that's crazy in Kentucky is some of these dogman creatures, or these large wolf-like creatures, bipedal wolves, that are basically werewolves, in which werewolves is kind of a bad term to use because that means there has to be transformation, like in the monster movies. But they've been spotted in Kentucky. Land Between Lakes is a hot spot for that. They actually got a beast down there that's the beast of Land Between the Lakes, and it is a dog man or a or wolf. I'll just say wolf creature. It makes you wonder about that stuff. You had the incidents in Waddy, Kentucky. I've done some research on those, and they called it the Waddy werewolf. And what I really think it probably was a mountain lion or some type of black panther. But then some of those accounts that I've received, and I've actually got to talk to the animal control officer that was in charge of that, some of it is not as easily explained as being a mountain lion or something like that. So there's plenty of stuff out there in Kentucky that we don't know about. And I think that's the coolest part about it. Like the creature here in Lawrenceburg, it's got the nickname of Howdy. And they call it Howdy because some of the times when it was sighted by people, it looked like it was waving at them. So they nicknamed it Howdy. And that's what it's called. It's called the Cedar Brook Howdy. And Cedar Brook's kind of the area where it is. But they said it looked like it raised their hand at them. And so they called it got that nickname of Howdy. There were a couple eyewitness accounts, and that's how it got that name. So, it's crazy how these different little creatures get different names. You got the Spotsville monster, and it's a Bigfoot creature, and it was in the lower part of Kentucky. So there's all these little spots of things throughout Kentucky that are pretty neat once you dig into them.
What do you hope the folks take away from the event when they leave the Cryptid Con?
T-shirt. Take a T-shirt away with it. We don't need to keep all those. No, I want them to have fun. I want them to come to Frankfort, Kentucky, whether they be from Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky. I'll tell you what, the first ticket we sold, one of the first VIP tickets we sold was for Australia.
Really?
We had a guy from Australia buy a ticket to come all the way to Kentucky to go on this Bigfoot expedition.
Wow.
So he's coming from Australia, and they got the Yowie over there. So it's going to be awesome to hear how their creatures are similar to what we have here. And that's what you find, and that's what, to me, makes Bigfoot more believable. You've got these Bigfoot creatures all across the world that fit the same pattern, and some of these areas do not have internet like they should, like some of these jungles and things. So where are they getting that information? It has to be from credible witness accounts. So to me, that gives it a little more validity that there is a creature out there, whether it be a unidentified ape or Gigantopithecus that has kind of evolved into something new. Who knows? But there's something out there. And when they come to Cryptid Con, I want them to come with an open mind, to meet their favorite researchers, to buy books, to get whatever they need to further their research. And if you're a fan of Finding Bigfoot or one of these TV shows, come out there and meet these folks. But the biggest, at the end of the day, we want them to go out of there with having fun. That's it. We want them to have fun and to walk out of there with an experience where they want to come back to the next one, wherever it may be.
You have total support with me on this every single year. You know, I support all the conventions around here, and I hope to get out to make one of these eventually, to hang out with everybody and pick their minds and stuff.
I hope you come out. That'd be good. You know, I hope you come out. I think you'd really enjoy it.
How can
you know, come up sometime, because you're just in Eastern Kentucky. Come up. You know, I've got the Ghost Walk going on in Lawrenceburg. You'd love that, you know, to come up and do that. That ain't too far from you.
No, not far at all.
But yeah, you know, cryptidcon.com. You go there, you're going to find the schedule. You're going to find where you can, if you buy your tickets now, you can get them for cheaper than you're going to be able to get them at the door. And they're really cheap. Right now online, they're $15 for a day pass. So, you know, go on there, get your tickets, get them in advance, come up there, hang out with us. It'll be a world of fun. You'll get to really kind of see these people in a nice, close, intimate setting.
Folks, stick around. We got some great music coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and Uber City Radio. Please get out and go to Cryptid Con. You know, this is another flavor of stuff that we have here, not just horror or paranormal. There's other things that do exist. So that's in Frankfort, Kentucky, September 9th and 10th at the Capitol Plaza Hotel. So get out and check that out at cryptidcon.com. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thank you very much.